any moment. Anything Prabhupada might say could be his last words. He came into Prabhupada's room, offered obeisances, and got up very close to the bed. Quote, "Do you think that this movement can go on without me?" Prabhupada asked. Giriraj was astonished that Prabhupada had called him in the middle of the night to ask him this. "I think," said Giriraj, "that as long as we are sincere and go on chanting Hare Krishna and follow the principles, the movement will be successful." Srila Prabhupada was silent. When he spoke, each word seemed to come with great effort. He uttered the word organization. Then he said organization and intelligence. Is there anything? Giriraj felt within his heart that he wanted to cry out, "Srila Prabhupada, stay with us." But instead he said no. "All right," Prabhupada said. And Giriraj offered obeisances and left. Outside Prabhupada's room, Giriraj continued to reflect on Prabhupada's words, organization and intelligence. Prabhupada seemed to be demanding much more love and commitment. Not that ISKCON could survive on organization and intelligence alone. Giriraj was thinking that perhaps these might be the last words Prabhupada would ever speak to him. Paramananda, the temple president of Prabhupada's Pennsylvania farm project, Caitanya, also came to be with Prabhupada. To organize this farm project, said Srila Prabhupada, simple living. Human life is meant for God realization. Try to help them. We're always feeling your presence very strongly, Srila Prabhupada, said Paramananda. Simply by your teachings and instructions, we are always meditating on your instructions. Thank you, said Srila Prabhupada. That is the real presence. Physical presence is not important. Paramananda had brought a letter from his wife, Satyabhama. Tamal Krishna asked if he should read it, and Prabhupada agreed. Tamal Krishna read on. Dear Srila Prabhupada, please accept my most humble obeisances. All glories to your divine grace. This shawl is made of the wool from our own sheep. It is spun and woven here at Caitanya. It is the first piece we have made. While I was working on it, I would always think of you, how I was supposedly making you a gift. But actually, you are giving me the gift of engagement in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada, I always pray to Lord Nrsingadev to protect you and allow you to stay with us to finish your books. But I think today the rain falling from the sky is actually the tears of the demigods crying at the prospect of your departure. I am also crying. Even Krishna cried at the passing of grandfather Bhishma. So I have a right to cry. I cannot be so philosophical to say that you are always present in your books and teachings. Though I know these things are true, I will miss you so much. I will miss you so much, Srila Prabhupada, if you go. I beg that I may always remain your menial servant and devotee, your humble disciple, Satyabhama Dasi. Thank her, said Srila Prabhupada, and he reached for the shawl made with our wool. So you'll take rest now, Srila Prabhupada suggested Tamal Krishna. Said Prabhupada, this can be on the foot. And he gestured that the saffron-colored shawl be put as a blanket on his bed. Tears came from his eyes as he lay back. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If you go to Caitanya, you can have darshan of that shawl. That came back. Tamal Krishna Maharaj brought it back. So today, on the instructions of the devotees, I am reading Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, verses 1 through 19. Adi Lila, chapter 1, verses 1 through 19. Now, how should we do this? We can read all the verses. We're not going to chant them all, obviously. And then we can chant one. There's some very nice ones, obviously. Panchatat Bhamakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Surupakam Bhakta Avatar Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Also our Mangala Charana is taken from this as well. So let's see what we can do. Chapter 1, the Spiritual Masters. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than the combined form of Sri Radha and Krishna. This is the preface, so you go to the beginning, just before that. Here's the life of those devotees who strictly follow in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami are the two principal followers of Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami, who acted as the most confidential servitor of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Vishwambar, in his early life. A direct disciple of Srila Rupa Goswami was Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, and the author of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, stands as the direct disciple of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. The direct disciple of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who accepted Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti as his servitor. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur accepted Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who in turn accepted Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Om Vishnupad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the divine master of our humble self. Since we belong to this chain of disciplic succession from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this edition of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta will contain nothing newly manufactured by our tiny brains, but only remnants of food originally eaten by the Lord himself. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not belong to the mundane plane of the three qualitative modes. He belongs to the transcendental plane beyond the reach of the imperfect sense perception of a living entity. Even the most erudite mundane scholar cannot approach the transcendental plane unless he submits himself to transcendental sound with a receptive mood. For in that mood, only can one realize the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What will be described herein, therefore, has nothing to do with the experimental thoughts created by the speculative habits of inert minds. The subject matter of this book is not a mental concoction, but a factual spiritual experience that one can realize only by accepting the line of disciplic succession described above. Any deviation from that line will bewilder the reader's understanding of the mystery of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta, which is a transcendental literature meant for the postgraduate study of one who has realized all the Vedic literatures, such as the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra, and their natural commentaries, such as Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. This edition of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta is presented for the study of sincere scholars who are really seeking the absolute truth. It is not the arrogant scholarship of a mental speculator, but a sincere effort to serve the order of a superior authority, whose service is the life and soul of this humble effort. It does not deviate even slightly from the revealed scriptures, and therefore anyone who follows in the disciplic line will be able to realize the essence of this book simply by the method of oral reception. The first chapter of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta begins with 14 Sanskrit verses that describe the absolute truth. Then the next 3 Sanskrit verses describe the principal deities of Vrindavan, namely Sri Radha Madana Mohana, Sri Radha Govinda Dev, and Sri Radha Gopinathji. The first of the 14 verses is a symbolic representation of the supreme truth, and the entire first chapter is in actuality devoted to this single verse, which described Lord Chaitanya in his 6 different transcendental expansions. The first manifestation described is the spiritual master, who appears in 2 plenary parts called the initiating spiritual master and instructing spiritual master. They are identical because both of them are phenomenal manifestations of the supreme truth. Next described are the devotees, who are divided into 2 classes, namely the apprentices and graduates. Next are the incarnations, avatars of the Lord, who are explained to be non-different from the Lord. These incarnations are considered in 3 divisions: incarnations of the potency of the Lord, incarnations of his qualities, and incarnations of his authority. In this connection, Lord Sri Krishna's direct manifestations and his manifestations for transcendental pastimes are discussed. And next considered are the potencies of the Lord, of which 3 principal manifestations are described: the consorts in the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha, the queens of Dwarka Dham, and the highest of all, the damsels of Brajadam. Finally, there is the Supreme Lord himself, who is the fountainhead of all these manifestations. Lord Sri Krishna and his plenary expansions are all in the category of the Lord himself, the energetic absolute truth, whereas his devotees, his eternal associates, are his energies. The energy and the energetic are fundamentally one, but since their functions are differently exhibited, they are simultaneously different also. Thus, the absolute truth is manifested in diversity in one unit. This philosophical truth, which is pursuant to the Vedanta Sutra, is called Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, or the conception of simultaneous oneness and difference. In the latter portion of this chapter, the transcendental position of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and that of Srila Nityananda Prabhu are described with reference to the above theistic facts. Text 1. Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan Isham Ishvara Tarakan Tat Prakasham Chitat Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Sangikam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnation, his plenary portions, his energies, and the primeval Lord himself. Text 2. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodato Godo Diye Pushpavanto Chitro Sando Tamo Nudo. You can repeat this in your mind. You should chant it, but you chant it internally. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. Yad Advaitam Brahmo Panishadi Tad Apyashyatano Bhava Ya Atmantara Yami Purusha Iti So Shamsha Vibhava Shad Aishrayi Purno Ya Iha Bhagavan Swayam Ayam Na Chaitanya Krishna Jagati Paratatvam Param Iha. What the Upanishads describe as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord known as the Supersoul is but his localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, full with 6 opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. Anarpita Chayim Chara Karunya Vitirna Kalo Samapayitum Unat Jwala Rasa Swa Bhakti Shayam Hari Purata Sundara Juti Kadamba Sandipita Sadar Hridaya Kandare Spuratu Va Satchinandana. May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy, to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellows of conjugal love. Radha Krishna Pranaya Kritiya Radhini Shakti Asmat Ekat Manavapi Bhuvi Bhura Deha Vedam Katoto Chaitanya Kyam Prakatam Adunata Prayam Chaikyam Aptam Radha Bhavat Juti Sarvalitam Nomi Krishna Sarupam. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves eternally. Now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. Shiradhaya Pranaya Mahima Kidrisho Vanyavirya Vanyavaiva Vanayaiva Swadhyale Adhuta Madhurima Kidrishova Madhya Sokyam Chasha Mad Anubhavataha Kidrisham Veti Lobha Tadbhavadya Samanjini Satchigarbha Siddho Harindu. Desiring to understand the glory of Radharani's love, the wonderful qualities in him that she alone relishes through her love, and the happiness she feels when she realizes the sweetness of his love, the Supreme Lord Hari, richly endowed with her emotions, appeared from the moment Srimati Sachi Devi, as the moon appeared from the ocean. Sankarshana Karana Toyo Shayi, Garbo Dashayi Cha Ayogti Shayi, Sheshas Yashamsha Kala Sanitya Nandak Kirama Sharanam Mamastu. May Sri Nityananda Ram be the object of my constant remembrance. Sankarshan, Sheshanaga, and the Vishnus, who lie in the Karna ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk, are his plenary portions, and the portions of his plenary portions. Mayaitate Vyapi Vaikuntha Loke, Purnai Shraye Shri Chatur Vyuha Madhye, Rupam Yashod Pati, Yashod Bhati, Sankar Shanakyam, Tam Shri Nityananda Ramam Prapadye. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, who is known as Sankarshan, in the midst of the Chaturyuha, consisting of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulence and resides in Vaikuntha Loka, far beyond the material creation. Maya Bharata Janda Sangar Shoyanga Shete Saksha Karna Bodhi Madhye Yes Yai Kangsha Sri Puman Adi Devas Tang Sri Nityananda Ramang Prapadye. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose partial representation, whose partial representation called Karana Dakshaya Vishnu, lying on the Karna ocean, is the original Purusha, the master of the illusory energy, and the shelter of all the universes. Text 10, in case you lost count. Yasam Samsa Shila Garabodashayi, Yana Vyabjam Loka Sangata Nalam, Lokashastu Sutika Dhamma Dhatus, Tam Sri Nityananda Ramang Prapadye. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. Yashyam Sham Shamsha Parak Makilanam Osta Vishnu Bhati Dugdapti Shayi Shoni Bhartayat Kala So Pinantas Tam Sri Nityananda Rama Prapadye. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose secondary part is the Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. That Kshirodakshaya Vishnu is the supersoul of all living entities and the maintainer of all the universes. Sheshanaga is his further sub-part. Text 12. Mahavishnu Jagatkarta Mayaya Yak Srijat Yadaha. Mayaya Yak Srijat Yadaha. Tajyavatara Evayam Advaitachaya Ishvara. Lord Advaitacharya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. Advaitam Harin Advaitat Archayam Bhakti Samkshanat Bhaktavataram Isham Tvam Advaitachayam Ashraye. Because he is not different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita. And because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. Therefore I take shelter of him. Panchatat Bhamakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Sarupakam Bhaktavatar Bhaktatyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is not different from his features as a devotee, devotional incarnation, devotional manifestation, pure devotee, and devotional energy. Jayatam Surto Pangor Mamamanda Matergati Matsavasva Padambo Jo Radha Madana Mohana. Glory to the all-merciful Radha and Madhava Mohan. I am lame and ill-advised, yet they are my directors, and their lotus feet are everything to me. Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadrumado, Srimad Ratnagara Singhasanastho, Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo, Prishtalabi Sevyamano Smami. We used to have that painting. It's been gone for quite some time. In the temple of jewels in Vrindavan, underneath the desire tree, Sri Radha Govinda, Sri Radha Govinda, served by their most confidential associates, seated upon an effulgent throne, I offer my humble obeisances unto them. Shriman Rasarasamrambi Vishvang Sivaka Takastita Karsham Venu Swanar Gopir Gopinata Shri Estunam. Sri Srila Gopinath, who originated the transcendental mellow of the Rasa dance, stands on the shore of Vamsiva and attracts the attention of the cowherd damsel with the sound of his celebrated flute. May they all confer upon us their benedictions. Text 18. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta. Glory to Sri Caitanya Nityananda, glory to Advaita Chandra, and glory to all the devotees of Sri Gaura, Lord Caitanya. 18 Takora Gaudiya Kari Yakchena Atmasat, 18 Era Charana Vandam Tine Moranat. These three deities of Vrindavan, Madana Mohan, Govinda, and Gopinath, have absorbed the heart and soul of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, followers of Lord Chaitanya. I worship their lotus feet, for they are the lords of my heart. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The author of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta offers his respectful obeisances unto the three deities of Vrindavan, named Sri Radha Madana Mohana, Sri Radha Govinda Dev, and Sri Radha Gopinathji. These three deities are the life and soul of the Bengali Vaishnavas or Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who have a natural aptitude for residing in Vrindavan. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who follow strictly in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, worship the divinity by chanting transcendental sounds meant to develop a sense of one's transcendental relationship with the Supreme Lord, a reciprocation of mellows, rasas, of mutual affection, and ultimately the achievement of the desired success in loving service. These three deities are worshipped in three different stages of one's development. Followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu scrupulously follow these principles of approach. Gaudiya Vaishnavas perceive the ultimate objective in Vedic hymns, composed of 18 transcendental letters that adore Krishna as Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopi Jana Ballabha. Madan Mohan is he who charms Cupid, the god of love. Govinda is he who pleases the senses and the cows. And Gopi Jana Ballabha is the transcendental lover of the gopis. Krishna himself is called Madana Mohan, or Madan Mohan. Govinda, Gopi Jana Ballabha, and countless other names that he plays in his different pastimes with his devotees. The three deities, Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopi Jana Ballabha, have very specific qualities. Worship of Madan Mohan is on the platform of re-establishing our forgotten relationship with the personality of Godhead. In the material world, we are presently in utter ignorance of our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. Pango refers to one who cannot move independently by his own strength, and Mandamate is one who is less intelligent because he is too absorbed in materialistic activities. It is best for such persons not to aspire for success in fruitive activities or mental speculation, but instead simply to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The perfection of life is simply to surrender to the Supreme. In the beginning of our spiritual life, we must therefore worship Madan Mohan so that he may attract us and nullify our attachment to material sense gratification. This relationship with Madan Mohan is necessary for neophyte devotees. When one wishes to render service to the Lord with strong attachment, one worships Govinda on the platform of transcendental service. Govinda is the reservoir of all pleasures. When by the grace of Krishna and the devotees, one reaches perfection in devotional service, he can appreciate Krishna as Gopi Jana Ballabha, the pleasure deity of the damsels of Braja. Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu explained this mode of devotional service in 3 stages, and therefore these worshipable deities were installed in Vrindavan by different Goswamis. They're very dear to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas there, who visit the temples at least once a day. Besides the temples of these 3 deities, many other temples have been established in Vrindavan, such as the temple of Radha Damodar of Jiva Goswami, the temple of Shamasunda of Shamananda Goswami, the temple of Gokulananda of Lokanath Goswami, and the temple of Radharamana of Gopal Bhatt Goswami. There are 7 principal temples over 400 years old that are the most important of the 5,000 temples now existing in Vrindavan. Gaudiya indicates the part of India between the southern side of the Himalayan mountains and the northern part of the Vindhya hills, which is called Aryavarta, or the land of the Aryas. This portion of India is divided into 5 parts or provinces, Panchagauda Desh: Saraswat, Kashmir and Punjab, Kanyakubja, Uttar Pradesh, including the modern city of Lucknow, Madhya Gauda, Madhya Pradesh, Maithila, Bihar and part of Bengal, and Utkala, part of Bengal and the whole of Orissa. Bengal is sometimes called Gaudadesh, partly because it forms a portion of Maithila, and partly because the capital of the Hindu king Raj Lakshman Sen was known as Gauda. This old capital later came to be known as Gaudapur and gradually Mayapur. The devotees of Orissa are called Udiyas, and the devotees of Bengal are called Gaudiyas. And the devotees of southern India are known as Dravida devotees, as there are 5 provinces in Aryavarta, so Dakshinatya, southern India, is also divided into 5 provinces, which are called Panchadravida. The 4 Vaishnavacharyas, who are the great authorities of the 4 Vaishnava disciple successions, as well as Sripad Shankaracharya of the Mayavad school, appeared in the Panchadravida provinces. Among the 4 Vaishnavacharyas, who are all accepted by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Sri Ramanujacharya appeared in the southern part of Andhra Pradesh at Mahabhuttapuri. Sri Madhva Acharya appeared at Pajakam, near Vimanagiri, in the district of Mangalore. Sri Vishnu Swami appeared at Pandya, and Sri Nimbarka appeared at Mungera Patana, in the extreme south. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the chain of disciplic succession from Madhva Acharya, but the Vaishnavas in his line do not accept the Tattvavadis, who also claim to belong to the Madhva Sampradaya. To distinguish themselves clearly from the Tattvavadi branch of Madhva's descendants, the Vaishnavas of Bengal prefer to call themselves Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Sri Madhva Acharya is also known as Sri Gauda Purnananda, and therefore the name Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya is quite suitable for the disciplic succession of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, accepted initiation in the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Om Interesting to have Prabhu give this synopsis in a very condensed form. And in many ways, these histories, just like that Narottam Das Thakur, and how he fully manifested this realized love of God after it was deposited in the Ganges by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So such things are not for ordinary understanding. Without faith, no one can appreciate. Actually, everyone who's here now can understand how this realization of God is progressing. And he has a choice at every moment to continue on this path. There's never, it's not that Krishna says, in some manifestation that you should stop this or do this or exercise something which is not present in revealed scriptures. Many so-called swamis and avatars, will present something that they have seen a manifestation. But in Caitanya, only in a few places, in Sri Vasangam and in Caitanya, did Caitanya Mahaprabhu appear to a mass of people at one time. And this is something which is, not easily understood. But the Lord is present there wherever his name is being chanted. And he can choose to display himself at any point as he desires. And so there was obviously something very special about that gathering of the Vaishnavas at that point in time, which was, what was it, maybe 100 years after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we have, of course, we don't have to stretch our imagination in any way or form. If one can appreciate through our regular daily practice this Pancharatriki, which is for those who are honest, this is our platform that we function on. We're not, and it's clear from the descriptions here that Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojan is also meant to give one some understanding how he's advancing in spiritual life, or not advancing, as the case may be. So we should take shelter of this very simple. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta stressed this, and obviously he was the most erudite scholar who appeared in our line in recent history. But he was stressing this Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojan. Because otherwise it's very easy to get lost in this pseudo-bhava, this false emotional state that people will adopt in order to appear either as advanced or in order to gain some reputation, for whatever reason. This is, but it's very common, not so common in the West yet, but there's time. Unless one, and as Prabhupada describes, is strictly following. He emphasizes that nothing has been changed. Nothing in his presentation. So this emphasis on this point is here for all time. That anyone can refer to this and say, okay, so, especially if one is considering himself to write something in this regard. Prabhupada said, yes, everyone should write. But it has to be written based on this instruction, that nothing can be changed. The essence cannot be changed. Otherwise, gradually there'll be adulteration. There'll be some gradual deviation. So one has to carefully guard against this. This is practically our most sacred duty, is to maintain what Srila Prabhupada has given us. And there may be so many adjustments, but even if you, sometimes according to time and circumstance, you may tell some newcomer, some guest something that in order to relate to that person according to their particular situation, their level of intellectual or spiritual realization. But even that cannot deviate from the essence. It's not that you can say that, yes, all forms of God are one. All names are equal. You can say that, yes, all these names of gods have potency. There's no doubt. But you can't say that they're all exactly the same. Otherwise you run into this danger of equivalency. This is very... People will misunderstand, and your presentation will be tainted. So it has to be very clear that there is a distinction. We know Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. You may not be able to tell that person immediately, but you should not be thinking anything separately. that in your discussions, because we've seen at times that devotees will have a tendency to say, well, this is now, that was then. How many times have we heard this, in our efforts to maintain the standard that, well, that was then. Of course, if you ask Braj Mohan, well, maybe we should change some things, or Mother Shomai in the DD programming, because, we can't do everything now. It's too complicated. No, we cannot do that. What's that verse? So we can't, it simply becomes a disturbance in society. It may not be known immediately, but it will be gradually realized, by your ineffectiveness in making this temple a place for shelter for everyone who comes. There's no, when Prabhupada came on the Jaladuta, he brought with him Caitanya Caritamrta. This is what he was reading. So we know how concentrated Prabhupada's effort was in making sure that whatever he said was completely in line with what he understood from his spiritual master and in this line. And so we have to also have that sense. We should never be swayed by any arguments to any other situation that this movement should change its methods or techniques. No, this is a great, it's actually sacrilegious. But one has to have firm faith in this actual process in order to be able to maintain that conviction. Otherwise, then yes, everything, what do they say? Anything goes. No. I mean, what would be the difference then between that yaktama, taktapa, if you have this thing and what's weird, this is no different than the Mayavadis who are making so many adjustments. So we have to be very, very careful that when we're reading, we're actually reading in the same mood that Srila Prabhupada is presenting this to us. In his efforts to convey the actual meaning, he's taking great care in every single word, every single sentence. There's nothing wasted. What does that say? Minimum words, maximum effect. Minimum words, maximum effect. Obviously he could have gone on and on and on, just in every single purport. Prabhupada's realization was oceanic, like his smile. But he kept everything in such a way that it could be easily conveyed, even to, those who are unfamiliar with all aspects of the Vedic literature. And we've seen that. We've seen people, how can you say, accidentally receive Caitanya Caritamrta and be so moved by it that they actually join the temple because they haven't read anything that in any other scripture that approaches, even barely approaches the philosophical, theosophical content of the Caitanya Caritamrta. It doesn't exist. And so so we can understand that the potency here is not just Srila Prabhupada's accurately conveying everything, but it's the Lord's energy directly appearing in this Panchatattvamakam Krishnam. These 5 features of Lord Chaitanya. Remember Prabhupada told us, as the Caitanya Caritamrta was being translated and was taking a long time, and Prabhupada was becoming impatient. So they produced one book. First they produced Teaching Lord Chaitanya. That was Prabhupada's summary study, because he thought he wouldn't be around to complete Caitanya Caritamrta. But then as he was translating, they produced that book, Panchatattva, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features. Very nice little condensed, which is from the Adi Lila. And so this was given to the devotees at that time. And it simply made them more eager to experience the full nectar of Caitanya Caritamrta. How much nectar was just in that one little soft-bound book. You know? And so this, so we want to, that this should, everyone should relish the Caitanya Caritamrta. You know, there's, it can't be stressed enough. Actually, in New York, in 1976, Prabhu would give 2 classes a day, and you can go and study Shishilaga in the day of Kriya. So on one, of course, one class Srimad Bhagavatam, and then again he would give Caitanya Caritamrta. And he had done this also in 75 at the temple on Henry Street. So somehow or other, and of course he was giving Caitanya Caritamrta classes in 1966 on 26th Avenue. And the devotees were also relishing it because it is, he probably one time said that Caitanya Caritamrta, wherever you open it, it is sweet. You know, so he was not even saying that you have to read it in order. It just said wherever you open it, it's nectar. So there's, so I encourage everyone to listen to these Caitanya Caritamrta classes that Srila Prabhupada was giving in New York, 1966, 1975, 1976, where he's these realizations are something that anyone can relish. You know, it's just the nectar is, you know, we can give some analogy how the nectar is flowing in this regard, like waves. And one can easily float in those waves, you know, filled with this transcendental buoyancy. You know, but some people are hesitant for whatever reason. They don't feel qualified with this or that. So therefore, I would suggest that everyone read first teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Because Prabhupada, specifically, of everything we have, this is Prabhupada's unique contribution, you know, at least in our time here. That, you know, there's the Upadeshamrita, there's the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's this. But this teachings of Lord Chaitanya is uniquely given to modern society by His divine grace. These are His potent realizations. Potent. They have the ability to change one's heart, you know, to make him a devotee. You know, and these books have been around since the very beginning. Actually, we used to have one in the museum, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, signed by Srila Prabhupada. That has also disappeared before we came. So there's something, and actually Mother Divyangi, I remember she told me there was one signed copy in the New York Public Library. If you go to, now we're not telling everybody to rush to the New York Public Library, but the 42nd Street branch, none of these books are on display. You have to, you know, you fill out the call slip, and they, you know, a page runs down to the stacks, and he puts it in a little dumbwaiter, and it comes up to the desk, and then you get Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And not just Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, you also have Nectar Devotion, and both these editions are signed by Prabhupada. So, you know, one should probably leave them there for the next person to enjoy. So that many people have thought that, let me just, and I told Divyanki that she could. I said, bring some new copies and offer them to the library and see if they'd like to exchange them, but they didn't want to exchange. So, but at least you tried. You know. And of course, that would be very nice to have those original copies, first editions. But they're so, just imagine how powerful these books, they're sitting there, and it's not that, if you look at the call card, you know, many people have read this book, so many scholars, you know, when you pull it, I used to work in that library, so, you know, to do what they do. You can see on the call card how many people have asked for this book. Yeah, before it gets thrown away, it fills up. But, so they're very well-read books, you know, by scholars and others. And who knows, you know, who will be affected to the extent that that person, again, will come, who will seek out the association of devotees, will say, where are these people? You know, who are these? Of course, in the old days, if you looked at the book, it would say, you know, ISKCON Press, 32 Tiffany Place, you know, like our readers can contact for further information, 439 Henry Street, like that, or the BBT. And many devotees have done that also. So how powerful, you know, the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in every single page of the Chaitanya Charitamrta, just ready to come directly. You know, this transmission of knowledge is not some ordinary, mundane, you're sitting in a lecture hall and some guy is yelling from the bottom of the well, trying to get you to hear just a couple of different things, you know, that you take your notes on. You know, but this exchange, you know, for the sincere devotee is happening. We don't want to use terms like mystical or magical. Those convey a certain temporary or imaginative connotation. But this real, you know, Chaitya Guru, this real awakening within oneself to this transcendental truth, forever keeps you bound in a safe haven at the lotus feet of Sri Guru, who is the external manifestation, you know, of the Lord in the heart. So, but one has to have this sentiment, not artificially, you know, not that we're just here today and gone tomorrow. That's sentiment, right? What is that? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's famous that? Saying that religion without philosophy is sentiment. And philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So we have to have this basis of the philosophy in order to keep this realization alive. So this chanting, this gradual, everyday cleansing of the heart is what maintains one's eligibility. You know, just like you have a professional license, and you have to have X number of credits in order to maintain it. 30 in a year, 40 in a year, 20 in a year, whatever it is. When you go to renew your license, they want to see those educational credits, those CUs. Otherwise, you can't renew your license. You know, you're supposed to be a doctor, you have to be up with the latest whatever, latest nonsense that they tell you have to be up to date. So if you're not up to date with your chanting, your daily devotional practices, then you run the risk of losing, you know, this, it's not lost, but it becomes covered, because that's the nature of mind, this throwing and covering. You know, so you may have had something, it's like you can have gold, you know, but if you throw mud on it, it's hidden. It's still there, but now you can't find it. You look all around for it. Where did it go? So we shouldn't be so careless with our practices that somehow or other things take a priority, and that the devotional practices take a backseat. And those practices are not just that we're chanting. Yes, we're chanting, we're following the orders of the spiritual master. He has ordered us to chant. It's not an independent activity that you can just say, well, I'm going to chant. No, if the spiritual master didn't give you the mantra, then, you know, good luck. You know, it's not going to have the desired effect. You know, so you have to be quite careful. So he's given us so many things with regards to the morning program. You know, and one essential point, of course, is to maintain this reverence for the spiritual master. You know, and that's why we see that, you know, this, we have so many programs. It's actually gradually being reduced. What will be next? So we don't have an opportunity to do the evening program because we have seemingly so many other things to do. So maybe at a certain point we'll think that, well, we can just put aside Guru Puja too. I could do so much more if I don't have to come down here and do this. So one should never even contemplate this justification. But to do so requires a level of discipline that you get by performing this activity. What does it say? Habit. Okay, Prabhupada also referred to that. It's, some people say that, anyway, there's so many sayings you can find. You'll find them on all types of motivational posters. But basically, this is something that you have to reinforce as a habit. It has to be there. You just, in your mind, you don't let yourself deviate. There may be so many excuses. But you're in this temple, in the house of the Guru. And that's what this is. This is the house of the Guru. For us, it's the Guru Kula. Where it's non-different. It doesn't matter if it's 5,000 years ago or 5 minutes ago. The attitude should always be there that I am the servant of the spiritual master. And therefore, in order to maintain that, I must feel myself as a servant. Therefore, when the servant calls, when the spiritual master calls, one has to immediately respond. He has to immediately respond. He has to be there. Otherwise, there's a tendency that one should neglect. So of course these things are best done congregationally, just like chanting. Right? It's like one hand clapping. You can't have Harinam with, well, you could. Prabhupada started Harinam with one person, yeah. Started the whole movement simply by his chanting. Right? But his potency is, again, immense compared to our potency. So I may go out and chant and maybe I'll get no result. Maybe I'll never get a result. Krishna is not obliged, and he can do what he likes. It's entirely up to us to develop that relationship, that sincerity, to act in such a way that Krishna sees us. This is, and when you have that mood, when you think like that, then you can do anything for Krishna. And the facility will be there. Prabhupada said, responsibility means facility. That's another thing to remember. Responsibility means facility. And vice versa, to a certain extent. So everything will come, not according to our scholarship or whatever other qualities one may possess that have their origin in the material realm, that these things are not what will help us to push on the movement. What will help us to push on the movement, Prabhupada said, the only ingredient required for success in spiritual life is sincerity. The only ingredient. He never said you have to be a scholar or this or that. Only sincerity. Because Krishna is giving everything else. If we think that this somehow or other, everything is coming due to my labor, my endeavor, God, this is that whole point. Krishna is doing everything. But the false ego is, what is that representation of there's that story in the latest BTG, Hanuman. Anyway, he was impeded on his path to Lanka by those three different representations of, and one was false ego. And one has to kill false ego. Other things he can use his intelligence for. That was basically the story. But false ego has to be killed, chopped up and destroyed. So it's not to be dealt with lightly. If one cannot conquer that false ego, he's always going to be burdened. It will always be that second voice in him telling him, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to chant today. You don't have to do this. You don't have that. Because that false ego is the remnants of your independence. Your so-called independence. You know, so that don't give it the opportunity to act. You know, always be alert to how am I being affected by my false ego. I mean, everybody has to deal with this. And so therefore, because everyone has this affliction, we're in this situation together, one can lean on his God brothers and God sisters for some support. That, you know, I'm having this issue, and I'm not sure what to do about it. How should I understand this situation? You know? And generally, because of super soul, what does it say? What do they say? 2 heads are better than one? We say 2 super souls are better than one. Right? So we have so many super souls here. But if you're not humble, then you won't ask. You think, no, my super soul is better than your super soul. My intelligence is better than your intelligence. I can't find anyone as intelligent as me, so therefore I can't ask anyone. Right? Amazing, people think like that, right? So we have to end, because it's Sunday. We have to take breakfast on time, do our service on time. So many things are there. Especially to welcome the guests and to give them something that they can relate to, which refers to your realization, certainly, without adulteration. You know, and that you can do that. Even if Prabhupada just said that constantly, he would always say, first realization, I am not this body. And we can always tell so many people, anyone you meet, you can open a conversation, you know, with along those lines. You just have to figure it out according to that, without changing the essence. Like that. Some people will open up the conversation for you. They'll say, I hate my body. You know, how many teenagers have you had? I had 6 kids. You know, at a certain point, all of them say that. You know, so you can say, well, you're not your body. How's that? We have time for half a question. Who's got half a question? You got half a question? We can take a question. Otherwise, we will be formed. Is there any? You don't need the mic. Somebody can just yell it. Yeah. Any questions? Otherwise, I don't know if this is going to be the continuous format of Caitanya Caritamrta on Sunday, but if it is, it's nice, but at the same time, you have to read through 20 verses. That takes half the class.
Yeah.
Loud.
In the purport, it was written that Madhvacharya's followers are not following the Tattva Buddha, the Tattva Pada of Madhvacharya. So why is it there?
What do you mean? No, they are in our parampara.
And why did the Gaudiya parampara get separated?
No, the point they were making was the tattva bodies.
Yeah.
That's a deviation. Slight.
Yeah, how did
Okay.
that happen?
How does it deviate? Someone wants to emphasize a particular aspect. Someone wants to worship the Paramatma. And the Supreme Truth is known in 3 features. Vedanti tat tat vidat tat tam yat gyam. So the Brahma bodies, they're worshiping the Supreme Lord, but in his impersonal feature. And then the yogis are worshiping the Supreme Lord in his Paramatma feature. Like that. So, and we're worshiping the Supreme Personality of God in complete. Om Purnama Dakta. We have that. And so some, lines may have a different emphasis. They don't want to go to the highest level for whatever reason. They don't feel their followers are capable, or they don't feel it's necessary. They think liberation is sufficient at a particular stage in your devotional life, and there's no need to go beyond it. So they walk around and impersonalists. What do they say? They say, Om Namo Narayana, Tat Tvamasi. That's it. That's all they want to know. So that's how do you want to say it? Incomplete realization. So we're very fortunate that we have complete realization presented to us. Whether we actually fully appreciate, understand, assimilate, that's a different story. But everything is there. It's just like Prabhupada used to use the analogy. Someone has one small book of philosophy, okay, that's supposed to detail everything about the creation, the maintenance, the dissolution, and the conduct. But it's incomplete. Anyone who's honest can see it's incomplete. Now, if you read third canto, you go further on and you're understanding where do these subtle senses, how does everything come about? Taste, form, touch, smell, all these things. Where does that come from? How come it's not detailed in any other literature? Because evam parampara praptim, it was never maintained due to carelessness, apathy, deviation. So how fortunate are we? Inconceivable. Your fortune cannot be estimated. If you take to this process sincerely and honestly, there is no greater knowledge. There is no greater compendium of knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam, Caitanya, Caritamrta, these are the cream of the cream. The cream of the cream. And Prabhupada has given that to the entire world. So we say, Namo Mahavajnana Krishna Prabhupada, but who brought Lord Chaitanya? He's the most merciful incarnation. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada must be the most merciful servant. And we can certainly appreciate him in that way. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki. Jai. Wait. Sita Ram ki. Let's just go all around the room here.